for Dominic to answer. I'm just going to explain a little bit about what the kind of Leaders Award is. The If You Were an Engineer, What Would You Do competition is all about, as some of you maybe just joined us fresh today. So what is the competition? Its main aim is to inspire young people ages 3 to 19 to look at the world around them and design solutions to problems. This can be a problem as small as, say, getting out of bed in the morning, to a worldwide problem such as we are experiencing right now, and seeing if you can design an invention to solve it. We provide opportunities for you to meet and interview engineering professionals online, just like we're doing today, to inspire you to think of ideas and start designing some of your own inventions. To help you this, we also have lots of available resources on our website. So after our interview today, make sure you go and register for those. Our suggestion is that you make this kind of a weekly challenge, interviewing different engineering professionals every week, which we will provide for you, and looking for different problems every week in the world which you'd like to solve and then design an invention for. Just before you all then head back to school, you're going to choose your favorite invention you've come up with over the last few weeks and take this into school, where they can then send off your entry to our engineering professionals to read and grade. Now, I'm sure you didn't tune in today just to hear my voice. So without further ado, I'll now pass over to Dominic, who is going to share with us all about his role at Network Rail. Hi, Dominic, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, I can.
Fantastic. What I'm going to do, Dominic, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now, and then you should be able to share yours from there.
So, I will share. If by magic.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You can see that now, Dominic.
Excellent. Right. Make that work.
Perfect. And then whenever you're ready, off you go.
Right. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is quite an experience. So thank you again. So I'm Dom Mottram. I'm an operational sponsor for Network Rail, and I'm just going to tell you a bit about how I came to be who I am, what I do, and then obviously what I do for a job and how I got to where I am, having spent some time in Network Rail, and understanding why I think personally I have the best job in the world, because I get to be a 5-year-old every day and I get paid to do it. So who am I? Just quickly. So in the beginning, this is me. This is me on a train. So I have always kind of wanted to be involved in the railways. I'm somebody that, when you're growing up as a child, a boy or a girl, and you think, I want to go and do something really fun. So for me, it was either I want to be a train driver, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a firefighter. And I'm not very good to be an astronaut because I'm a bit tall and a bit lanky. I'd be a terrible firefighter because I'm scared of fire, water, and heights. So I kind of went, right, okay, let's see what the railways can do. So as with most kind of engineering people, I grew up with these things. I would like to say thank you to my mum for sending me these pictures a few months ago, just so I got hold of them. So this is my actual crane when I was young, and I still have it, and I'm really proud of it because it's kind of one of my proudest kind of possessions. Also, I played with trains as well, so I had a little train set. This is kind of one that I had, a little kind of plastic train set that you could build train tracks and kind of get under my mum's feet all the time, building railways, and it was something that I thought, this is brilliant. So when I was 6 years old, I left the UK and I went to this place here. We moved as a family to, well, those of you that want to guess what it is. So this is Belgium. So I grew up in Belgium. I was, went to international school with people from all over the world and made great friends that are now places like New York and China and Scotland and the Netherlands and everywhere. So I grew up on a diet of chocolate and waffles and chips, not all the time because that would be really unhealthy. So when growing up all the way through that, I kind of went, well, the railway is still something that interests me, something that inspires me, something that I really wanted to do. So the older I got, the more I thought, well, let's let's go and see the world. So I went to China for a bit. This is the Shanghai Maglev in China. It's the only kind of commercial maglev in the world. And even, as you can see, when I'm going on holiday, I will still go and see train things because it's something I really enjoy and I'm really passionate about. This is something, this picture was taken 10 years ago, about 10 years ago this week, when I went to Shanghai for my 21st birthday, when the Icelandic volcano exploded and I was stuck in China. So I was 31 last week, so every 10 years, global air travel stops. So in 10 years' time, yeah, I'll try and keep a low profile. So what happened at school? That's me. Yes, so anything is possible if you look like that. So I did 11 GCSEs and then did what every kid does, got spots, got braces, had 2 AS levels and 3 A levels. So I have AS levels in French and German and A levels in business, geography and travel and tourism, which was really good fun. After school, well, what did I do? I learned a lot in school. I learned about kind of friendships and being nice to people, and I captained the first 11 hockey team at school, which was really good fun because it taught me kind of how to manage people, how to be a leader, and how to be a team player, and that was really important. So if you're in school and you're listening to this, everything that you do and that you can get an opportunity to do it because it helps you kind of later in life. And a lot of the skills I learned then are helping with what I do now. After school, I went to university. So if those of you that were listening to the primary engineer talk last Wednesday, UWE Bristol, I went to the same university as this person and spent 4 years. I did a degree in geography and transport. So all the way through, I've kept this theme of wanting to kind of build stuff, and the further on I got in life, the more kind of distilled it became. So I spent 4 years doing that. I spent a placement year in Paris. So those of you that are kind of wanting to go to university and you get offered a placement year during your course, I would thoroughly recommend it because it's something that taught me a lot of working in a working environment, of speaking a different language, of being in a different culture, of having 2 hours for lunch every day, which I would recommend as a thing. So I did that, and that was brilliant fun. I also learnt Newton's third law. And for those of you that are into physics, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, Newton's third law is that every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So when you finish university and you've seen all the films and everybody throws their hats up in the air. And I did exactly that. But me being me, I threw it up in the air and forgot that it kind of comes down with great amount of speed. And I put myself a little scar on my head, which is still kind of around here. So yes, if you're going to throw your hat up in the air, don't stand underneath it and try and catch it on your head. There you go, life lesson for you and for me, because it still hurts. So that was school, that was university. This is how I grew up and did things. Oh, don't know what I did. So I did, well, I finished school, finished university, and kind of waited for 7 months at home, and I didn't know what I'd do. And then the day before the day before a graduate scheme closed, I got a tweet. So it was completely luck, I'll be honest. Luck sometimes plays a part in what everybody does. And it was the day before a graduate scheme closed for Network Rail. And I got a tweet retweeted into my timeline. And it said, oh, there's this Network Rail scheme called Track and Train. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Click, 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 click. And one thing led to another. And that was the end of February in 2012. And 6 weeks later, I was working for Network Rail in the April. So I've been at Network Rail now just over 8 years, and it's been an absolute roller coaster. So I had to move to start with from growing up in France and Belgium, basically moved my entire life to the UK to start working for Network Rail in Birmingham. And that was an amazing kind of crazy 6 weeks, but here I am. So what do I do now? There you go. That's a collection of things. So I get to basically dress up in orange some of the time and get to have fun building railways. But it's not just me. Network Rail has 42,000 people, and these people are from every walk of life, from every religion, from every race, from every gender, from every everything. Because you can see there, you don't have to be a boy to work on the railway. You can be anybody, and the railway, there is a job for you, like there was a job for me. So as an operational sponsor, I am responsible for projects and responsible for teams who go out and basically build really cool stuff. So I'm going to talk a bit about kind of what I do. So starting with a bit of trains, digging and tunnels, moving stuff about and lifting things, because ultimately I'm a 6-year-old, I get to play with diggers and cranes, and it's the best job in the world. So a bit about trains. For those of you that like trains, I like trains too. Liking trains is cool, and yeah, you're allowed to. People can like trains. So these are everything from steam engines all the way up to right at the bottom there, the kind of the high-speed stuff that we get in Europe and that we are getting in the UK. So we're going to start with trams. So one of my first projects was to do with trams. So we had a position in Birmingham where we wanted to extend the tram from one bit of Birmingham to outside of Birmingham New Street Station. So if you've been to Birmingham recently, you will recognise this outside of New Street Station. So one of my first projects was to extend that line and to help people to go and do that. So we did a lot of things where we had to understand what would happen to the railway underneath this, where the tram is, when the tram came along. So this was everything from the noise, from the vibration, from the electromagnetic interference, because that behind on the screen there is a big shiny thing. So for those of you that are doing physics, that's effectively a Faraday cage. So we had to connect all the overhead wires of the tram to that. So it was quite a difficult thing because there was a lot of electricity at play and it was very dangerous. And that was the main problem that we had. But as you can see, it worked and everything kind of came together, and now trams run quite happily most of the time to Birmingham New Street Station and now beyond to right outside my office, which is really quite useful. Also, London Underground trains. This was, I think, one of my most enjoyable projects because Bombardier came to us. This is a London Underground tube train. And they said, we want to transport the trains by railway from Derby to London. So we had a big project where we had to do what's called gauge clearance, where we had to make sure that all the London Underground trains could fit and they didn't kind of break anything, really. And that's one of the main things that we have. When other people come to us and they say, we want to do this thing, we have to make sure that they're not damaging our bit of railway. So what we had to do is, as you can see on the screen, the piece of kind of London Underground train, it's a lot wider than a normal train. It's kind of a bit kind of fat at the bottom. And that was a big problem because that clipped all the platforms. So we had to go and move a lot of the platforms down through the Chiltern main line to make sure it fit, or fitted. And then we could move the trains down to London. So if you've ever been to London, you've been on one of those trains, that's how they got to London. HS2, this is mad. There was a team, a very small team of us. So with HS2, as you've seen in the news, when HS2 gets to certain places in the UK, it kind of comes off its bit of fast railway and onto our normal bit of railway. And I was part of the project team that had to work with HS2 to engineer how the high-speed train was going to fit on our bit of railway, to make sure that, again, it didn't crash into anything and it didn't scrape any platforms down the side that damages. And that was fun because we got to do some brilliant things. We had to survey about 1,000 miles of railway with helicopters and trains, and it was really good because we got to use basically the big toy box. They're really fun stuff that people don't get to do. But because it was HS2, they were like, just get stuff done. And it was amazing to be able to do that and come up with things. And people say, yeah, okay, try things. And that's one of the main things I've learned doing projects, is that you need to try stuff. You can't just say, well, we've always done it this way, therefore it's not going to, we're going to stop doing things. We're only going to do it this certain way. Even if you're 5, even if you're 8, even if you're 11 years old, you've always got to, you never know what you can do unless you try and get the limits of things. So if you're building like a Lego tower and you want to put that together, you can see how high you want to get that tower. And then when it gets to a certain thing, it may fall over. But now you've learned where your limit is. And that's one of the things we learned with this project, is to understand where the limits were and what we could do and how possible it was. This is a fun one. So this is really quite recently. This is leaves on the line. So we had a project where there were leaves on the line in the Birmingham area, and the RSSB, who are the Rail Safety and Standards Board, so they're part of the government, they came to me and they said, we want to test this new type of system that will mean that trains can be less affected by leaves on the line. And this one was fun because we decided to close a bit of railway for 4 weeks and effectively, really safely, but slide trains about. So we had to drive at 50 miles an hour, and then you put the brake on and the train would slide. And it was really, it's not something that we're allowed to do often, and it has to be done very, very carefully. But it was really good because it showed that the railway is about heavy things, and we're not all about bashing things over. We're using a lot of technology, and we're looking a lot to the future to see how we can make the railways better for years and years to come. And this is a really good example of that, because it meant that, well, we got to slide trains about for 4 Sundays last October, and it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. So, quick thing about digging. So this is a tunnel. This is deep under Liverpool, one of my projects a few years ago. And in the a brief history of tunneling, years and years and years ago, you go underground the little railway and you dig with pickaxes, and that was kind of how tunnels were built. When you moved on into the next kind of couple of 100 years, you got these things called tunnel shields, where you would kind of dig underground and things wouldn't fall into you. So you can see there with the man in the hat right at the front. So he's hammering away and making sure things don't collapse inwards. Now we have things like this. This is a TBM. It's a tunnel boring machine, and it just spins around. The big blue thing at the front spins around, and it's like a giant earthworm, and it goes all the way through the earth and cuts a big hole in the ground to put a railway through. And this is where I come in. So this is one of the things I want to do. I want to have a TBM to play with. I haven't yet, but everybody has to have a dream. When things go wrong, though, this is kind of when they happen. So this is a phone call I got about 4 or 5 years ago, where this is in Birmingham. This is a place called Gas Street Basin. And somebody decided to put a hole in the top of my tunnel. So the railway goes underneath here, and there was water in this, and all the water came out. So what we had to do was go underground, pump all the water out, and drill into the tunnel and make sure all the water didn't come back in. So that's kind of some of the tunnely stuff that I do. I've also, this is a fun one. This is one of my proudest projects. There is a better one. This is Kilsby Tunnel. So those of you that are watching the news at the moment, Kilsby Tunnel, all this track is being relayed if you're watching the news. But what we had to do was we had to create a big scaffold inside the tunnel to do some small brickwork repairs. So that's me, there you go, little me, a couple of years ago, standing by the tunnel shaft. So when this tunnel was built in 1837, they had to be put 2 shafts in the tunnel, kind of big tunnels going upwards through the ground. And that was so that when steam trains came through, all the steam kind of went up the tunnel, because people were scared that the tunnel was so long that they wouldn't be able to breathe when they were on the train. So we decided to put scaffolding all the way up that shaft. So it's 60 foot wide and 160 foot tall. It's one of the tallest and widest shafts in the UK, and we put scaffolding all above it. And it meant the trains could carry on running at 110 miles an hour underneath, and we could carry on working over the top of the trains while they were running. And it's never been kind of done before on that scale. And yeah, it's one of my most proud projects because we kept the railway running. We kept people and goods moving while still carrying out work. So talking of moving, this is how moving stuff was done before. So those of you that have gone to places like this and museums, and you've seen how in the past people moved things about. Yeah, they used to put logs underneath and you'd slide the stone, and then you take the log out and you put the log at the front and you move it across. That then moved. This is how we do it now. This is an SPMT, self-propelled modular transporter. So that's effectively a big piece of Lego, and it's got a big engine at the front that you can see, and then all the loads of wheels. So you can make that big, and that's effectively a big remote control. So if you like playing with remote control things, this is the thing for you. And this is me. There you go. Looks familiar. This is me, and this is my big remote control car. And my remote control car, a few years ago, built that bridge. We drove literally with a little man. There he is. You can see him with his remote control, and we moved the bridge into place using a remote control thing. So even if you like playing with model things now, you can make a bigger version in the future if you get a job on the railway. And that's what it looks like when we were finished. So that was about 3 o'clock in the morning when there were no trains running. Last one, lifting. This is the best bit, because as you saw at the beginning, I like lifting things. I like playing with cranes, and I basically get to do that for a job. So this is a project I worked on in Albrighton. This was my Easter present to myself in 2017. This is one of the biggest cranes in Britain, with all the wheels and everything to go with it. That can lift about 1,000 tons, which is more than that much. This is how, so those of you that don't know how cranes work, so this is what the principles of cranes. If you lift things in a certain way, then the crane will stand up. But then if you lift things too far away and they're too heavy, the crane will tip over. So if you have something where you hold something like this right next to you, that feels okay, you can lift that. If you hold it far away, it gets heavier and it's more difficult to lift. And that's the principle, which it shows on that diagram on the right hand side. So if you want to try that after this, after I've finished, if you want to kind of hold something far away from you, it feels heavier than if it's closer to you. And that's how cranes work. So this is a project I didn't do. This is an example when stuff goes wrong. This is the Netherlands a few years ago, where they were lifting up a big piece of bridge on this canal. And that boat, those two cranes are on that boat. That boat isn't tied down. So what happened is those two cranes turned around and then fell over. Nobody died from that, luckily, because everybody had kind of been moved out of their house. But that's what happens when stuff goes wrong, when your weight isn't in the right place and you don't do the maths properly. So maths is really important when you're doing cranes, because you have to understand where loads are and where you do things without things falling over. So last project from me. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is, at the time, it was the biggest crane in Europe, and it was pretty much my 26th birthday. And if you just said to me when I was 6 years old, in 20 years time, Dom, you will have the biggest crane in Europe and it'll be yours and it'll be on your project and you can play with it. It's effectively your toy for the weekend. I wouldn't have believed you, but here I am, and here I was. So we had one of our drones and we delivered a bridge with that massive crane over a canal. I mean, not to make it even more difficult. We did all of that in 3 days. So everything from taking the railway apart, taking the bridge away, putting the new bridge back, and then putting all the railway back on top of it, all during a storm when it won. Well, the storm had a name. It was so big. So that was kind of, yeah, one of my proudest moments, if not my actual proudest moment, because it's something that my 6-year-old self wouldn't think was possible. But here I was with the biggest crane in Europe, basically as a toy, and it was, yeah, really good fun. So I think that's really it. What I do now, what I have done. So I get to dig stuff, I get to build things, I get to lift things, I get to basically play with the biggest toy box in the world. So you can go from, you know, having little me sitting on a train to being in bright orange, sitting in a really big train, to having a model of a train, a little Class 68 there, all the way up to playing with the real thing, the actual real thing. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening. But yeah, I think I would say if you have a dream and you want to go and build stuff and you want to like playing with trains, it's the best job in the world.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dominic, for your presentation there. Fantastic to see, like you said, all the way from playing with trains when you were younger to now your job now, which is fantastic. What we'll do, I'll just ask everyone if they can now start putting their questions into the Q&A section. Some people have already been doing that, which is fantastic. So we can go kind of straight into the questions now. So we've got the first one here, Dominic, from Alistair. What are your opinions on the High-Speed 2? I know you talked about it before a little bit before, but that's their question first.
Ooh, what is my opinion on High-Speed 2? I think it'll be very good. I think it'll be very useful for us as a country, because it will enable the long distance services to go on to a special track, and it will mean that all the other local services, we can have more reliable services, we can have more services, we can have more space for things like freight, because as we're finding at the moment with coronavirus, getting things across the country is really important. And I think that's the big thing about, you know, it's not just getting from London to Birmingham 20 minutes quicker, or probably about half an hour quicker. It's what it means for the wider network. So we have a position now where the line between London, Euston and Rugby is the busiest intercity railway in Europe. So the more space, or the more things we can put on it by taking some of the long distance passenger services off, the better it'll be, and the more reliable and the most benefit it will give to the country as a whole. So yeah, that's kind of what I think of it. There's more than just the speed element. There is a wider thing to it.
Brian is asking, what was it like going to an international school, and what were the best parts of it?
I'd say going to an international school was brilliant. So in my school, which was the British School of Brussels, we had, I think when I was there, about 65 different nationalities. So I had friends from Mauritius, from Barbados, from America, from Canada, from China, from all over the world. And it was really good to get a perspective from different people, different nationalities and different cultures, to be brought up in that environment. It was really cool because you got to make friends with loads of people from all over the world who I'm still friends with. You know, the friend of mine from Mauritius is now a doctor in Dublin. So everybody, even though when you're all in school and then suddenly, you know, we all finished school and everybody went across the world, to be able to have that upbringing, to be able to have those experiences, to help me now in, you know, working with different people with different viewpoints and different cultures, I think is really useful and really cool.
So the next one we've got is from Hetland. So it's about the High-Speed 2 again. So she says, is High-Speed 2 already running?
So High-Speed 2 at the moment, and so we've got High-Speed 1, which is between St Pancras and the Channel Tunnel. High-Speed 2 isn't due to be running, so trains won't be running for about another 8 to 10 years, because there's a lot of things we still need to do. Building railways takes a lot of time, because in the UK we have a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions. So the way our government and our legal system is set up, we have to listen to everybody's opinion and take into account everybody's opinion before we can do things. So there's still a lot of things to do, but there is still a lot of progress happening. If people go to places like Birmingham or London, you will see that stuff is being built. So yeah, it's coming. It's just a case of now, building it and getting the benefit from it.
I'm just going to pass over some questions that come through on Facebook, Dominic, as well. So first one is from Lola here. Do you make the trains or do you test them?
So the trains themselves are made by the train building companies. So the main ones in the UK, so we have Hitachi in Newton Aycliffe in the northeast of England, and Bombardier in Derby, and CAF, the Spanish company, they have a factory in Newport in South Wales. So we're building trains or assembling trains in the UK, but as Network Rail, our job is to make sure that the trains have the tracks to run on a day-to-day basis, and then when train companies want to put new trains into service, they have to come to us and they say, can we test on your network, and because we want to do this in the future. So we're doing a lot of that at the moment with West Midlands Trains. They're putting in new trains in Birmingham on the Cross City line, so we're working with them. And Avanti and TransPennine are also putting things in the northwest of England. So we're doing a lot of work across the country, even more than I'm aware of, to be able to make sure that all the train builders and the train companies make sure that their trains can safely run on the network.
So we've got a question here from Rohit. He must be a new graduate because he's asking, what suggestions do you have for new graduates waiting for final assessments for graduate schemes in 2020?
So I would say, I think it will be the most difficult experience you will ever have come across. Speaking from personal experience, I think it's everybody, because graduate schemes now are really kind of like really popular and really kind of something people want to do. It's very much something that that you have to be at the top of your game, because everybody will. There are only a certain number of jobs, and there are more people that want those places on the grad schemes. So using my example, Network Rail's graduate scheme was the second one I applied for. I applied for a few months before, so winter kind of 2011, 2012, I applied for cross-country trains. And I went into that graduate scheme and I got down to the final, I think it was 8 people. And that final day, we got sent to Birmingham. It was 2 days of interviews, assessments. We had dinner with the MD at the time in one of the evenings. It was intense, and I should be entirely honest, I wasn't prepared for that because I didn't know. So when a couple of months later I went for the Network Rail scheme, I knew what it was like, and I knew kind of what people were going to do, and as a result I went in, I did what I needed to do, and then a few days later they rang me up and told me I got the job. So I think you've just got to go in, you've got to be yourself, and you've got to just be honest with yourself. If things are deliberately in graduate schemes, they're meant to test you, they're meant to be difficult, and I think I wouldn't be, if you find something really difficult, learn from it. Don't be disheartened by it, because that's a life lesson as well, really. Sometimes things will be good, and sometimes things will be really difficult.
Yeah, some really, really good advice there, I think, there, Dominic. We've got one here from Brian, an interesting question here. So have you worked on any railways that go underwater?
Have I worked on any railways that work underwater? A couple. So I've worked, I think one of the ones in Birmingham where somebody decided to put a gondola pole through the top of my tunnel and all the water disappeared. That was inconvenient. But I think I haven't worked on the Channel Tunnel, which is really disappointing because it's a really cool thing. It was opened, I think, last week. So 1994, last week, so it had an anniversary. But growing up in France and Belgium, I've gone into the Channel Tunnel a lot of times, and it always inspires me that we can do that, the engineers can do that, and it always makes me smile every time I go under the tunnel, and I go, this is really cool. Somebody thought that this would be an idea, and they went and did it. So yeah, I would say if you're into tunnels and tunnels are your thing, tunnels will still need to be built. So it's definitely something to be excited for.
We've got another question from Lola on Facebook. She's asking, is it hard doing your job?
Oh, Lola. I think with every job, some days are really fun and some days are really difficult with every job. So the job where I had the biggest crane in Europe, that job, we started that job on the Friday night and we had to finish by the Tuesday morning. The Saturday afternoon of that weekend, Storm Katie came in, and we had to make the decision to effectively stop work for just over, I think it was 29 hours. And that was really, really, really hard because it was the right thing to do because it wasn't safe to carry on the work with the wind and the rain like it was. But there are some times where you stand in bright orange kit in the middle of where rain is going sideways and you're wet and cold and miserable and thinking this is the worst thing in the world. And then to me, I always remember, I have a phrase that my 6-year-old self gets me out of bed in the morning if I'm having a terrible time. And I always have to remember that I get paid to play with diggers and cranes and do what I've always wanted to do. And there are lots of people in the world that don't get to have as much fun at work. So I count myself incredibly lucky. So yeah, there are bad days, but they are outweighed a lot of the time by the good days.
We just got a message from Helen and Rohit. They said thanks for answering those questions, Dominic, that they've put in. So thank you guys as well for putting those questions in. We've got another question here. So how tall was the crane that was the Europe's tallest?
Oh, I don't know. I should be honest and say I don't know. It was very, very, very tall because I remember driving to the site to start my shift at 6 o'clock one morning. And this was in a place called Wolverhampton, just outside Wolverhampton in the Midlands in the UK. And I remember driving off the M6, driving off the motorway, and in the distance, I could see these two bright floodlights and this crane on the horizon. And it was so special because I was like, that's my crane. I can see my crane from like 5 miles away. So it was massive. But normally you decide how big your crane is by how much it can lift. So my crane at its most that it could lift was 1,200 tons, which at the time was the most anything could lift, a mobile crane could lift in Europe. So that's kind of how it was. And it was absolutely brilliant. But no, I shall go and find out how tall it was because I want to find out. So thank you for asking that question.
Had another one here. So how long does it take on average to assemble a train, Dominic?
It depends on how complicated the train is. So when we were doing the London Underground project, I was lucky enough to be invited by Bombardier to go and see the tube trains being put together. So the train itself, in the UK at least, we do what's called train assembly. Not like we get all the raw materials and the bits sent over to the UK, and then we put it together like a giant jigsaw. So you can, depending on how complicated the train is, you can build a carriage in a few days to a week. But then some trains that are really, really, really complicated take a lot longer to build because of various systems that have to go in. So the Channel Tunnel locomotives, so the Class 92s, for example, because they go through the Channel Tunnel, they have a duplicate system for everything. So everything, you have two electronic systems, 2 pantograph systems, 2 braking systems, just in case one fails, the train can carry on. So depending on how complicated your train is, depends on how long it takes to build. But normally you can kind of do a carriage per week if you're really going for it.
So we've got another question here from Oscar. So what is your favourite class of train?
Oh, my favourite class of train. I'm looking about because I have a model of it somewhere. I can't find it. It is the class. So if you want to go, so I'll go class 373 or class 92. So 373 is the original Eurostar train, and that's my favourite train because of the history it has and the way that it has been able to connect Europe to the UK, and also that it's the kind of the fastest train in the UK, so it can go to 186 miles an hour, which is about 300 kilometers an hour in new money. And I think that's my favorite train because it's a great example of, it's the Concorde of trains, because you can get the English working on it and the French working on it and all these people from different countries all working together to make something that is quite beautiful and quite brilliant and technologically, even now, fantastically advanced for, well, massively over-engineered for what it needed to do. But it's a testament now that these trains are still running kind of 25, 30 years after they were designed. And yeah, I really, yeah, so there you go, class 373, the original Eurostar train, yeah, is my favorite train.
We've got another one on, from Facebook here. So is this your only job, or do you do anything else? Or do you have any interests out of kind of engineering, Dominic?
Yes, so I have, I would show you, but the webcam's here. Behind this computer, there is a steam engine. I have a model steam engine because I'm 5 years old. And so outside of work, I have my own radio show on hospital radio. So there's a lot of people in Coventry Hospital that can listen to me, and it's broadcast around the world on the internet. So that's quite fun. And I love volunteering, so I do a load of stuff with schools and things like this. And I also spend a lot of time at Silverstone, so where the British Grand Prix is held. And I work a lot with Silverstone, volunteering at things like the British Grand Prix, at the MotoGP motorbikes, and a lot of things with them, because I'm a massive motorsport fan, a massive Formula One fan.
So out of those kind of interests that you've said there, is there any, if you weren't an engineer or worked for Network Rail, what kind of job do you think you would have?
I mean, the train driver, but that's still railway. I don't know. I like motorsport. I like the engineering behind motorsport, and especially Formula One, given that they're kind of at the kind of the future of motorsport, as it were, to understand the technology and where that is kind of going into things like Formula E, and where motorsport can things that happen in motorsport can kind of trickle down to kind of help day-to-day things. So things like diesel power or hybrid power at the Le Mans 24-hour race that's now trickling down into road cars. Just all the different technologies and the way that they can be used as a test bed for other stuff. So that really interests me, and that was something I could really get involved in.
We're just going to touch on the Leaders Award competition now. I was kind of talking about it at the intro and kind of why we're kind of doing these interviews. I was just going to ask, part of the Leaders Award, what they have to do, the children, is design their invention and kind of draw an invention. Do you think this is important, to draw out an invention before kind of doing the full invention, inventing the thing that they're going to do?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of things now, in order to understand them, it's much better and much easier to draw what you're going to do and not to be disheartened by things. So if you draw it and it doesn't work, then draw it again and draw it differently and just keep drawing it to build it, because you'd be really lucky if the thing you come up with works first time. Because engineering, most of the time, we have to test things to see if they work. So if you with the Leaders Award, I think it's really important to if it doesn't work first time, just keep going and keep drawing and keep improving your invention.
I'm going to ask you as well, Dominic, if you were to kind of invent something for the Leaders Award competition, what would you invent, do you think?
Um, right. Okay. So I would invent if something to help me at work. So I would invent a pair of glasses that you could see underground, because a lot of the work I do. So when we demolish bridges, for example, there are a lot of things that are inside bridges. So we have electricity cables, we can have gas mains, we can have water pipes, we can have internet cables, and a lot of, because there's so much stuff that is built into bridges or into railways, there's a big high risk of things getting hit. So gas mains getting hit with diggers and things like that. So there's a big risk to projects. It's really quite dangerous. So if I was part of the Leaders Award, I would create glasses that I could see into the ground, and then I could see if there were different pipes and different kind of cables, so I didn't hit them with my digger.
I think that's really good, as you found a problem that you kind of come across every day, and you've looked to solve that problem, which we're asking the young engineers to do. Think of a small, it could be a small problem or a big problem, and kind of create an invention or something that you think can solve that problem. So I think that's a really good example there, and quite a good theme, I think, as well, Dominic, of they can do it around kind of railways and trains, and think of different problems that they come across with those as well. And touching back to working for Network Rail, is there any what's your favourite place you've travelled to with work?
Favourite place I've travelled to with work. I think I would say St Pancras Station. So when I was, so I joined in April 2012 on the graduate scheme. And one of the first things, and one of the things I will say to people listening to this, that if you go on a graduate scheme, or if you're kind of new to a company, especially in the railways, that 99% of people you come across will want to share their experience and share their knowledge and show you stuff. And the thing I say to, I said to myself, and I say to kind of people that I now manage, is go and explore stuff. Go and say, can I come and visit this place? Can I come and see this? Can I come and see what you do? And that's what I did. So 3 months after joining the railways, I said to my boss, I want to go and experience the station. And I went down to London, and I went to St Pancras Station, and I spent a day at St Pancras being given a tour and understanding how a station worked, because I think you can only comment on something if you've experienced it, if you've seen it, if you've done it. So I went and saw the station and how it worked, and all the control rooms and the power and the trains. And it was bizarrely it was summer 2012. So it was the day of the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. And I was at the main station in London that took people to the Olympic Stadium. And to be in that environment and to see how it all worked, I've never forgotten, because it was such an experience and such a learning curve for me. So I think that would be the most exciting place that I've been. I think I've been in some weird, I've been down tunnel shafts, I've been over canals, but I think to see how people and stuff was put together, I think, St Pancras would be my favourite place.
I think that's some kind of incredible experiences that you've had already. Is there any places that you'd like to go with your work?
I think in the future, traveling. I think traveling more abroad. So working for other railway companies in different countries, and seeing more an international kind of railway thing, because I got bitten by the bug when I was in school, and also when I worked in France. So I think it's something I'm also interested in doing. So maybe somewhere like Shanghai in China, or Singapore, even further afield. But also, I'm eyeing up, having helped design the trains for HS2, to be on some of the test runs that they do, because that will be really, going on test runs and seeing things tried for the first time is really, really fun and really informative. So that's something I really want to kind of do as well. So as well as traveling more, I kind of want to just keep seeing the experiences that I can have in this country as well.
Is there kind of another part of engineering or network rail that you'd like to explore, a different kind of role you'd like to explore in the future, or even kind of a different place of work maybe that you've thought of?
I think understanding, so network rail itself, we're kind of in two bits. I mean, yeah, we're one company, but there's the bit that manages the tracks and the signals and the stuff that doesn't move. And then there's the operations side, so all the stations, all the, making sure that the signals move all the trains in the right places, making sure that the trains, can safely get from point A to point B. So I think more kind of seeing how the railway system works, I think is something I'd be intrigued to have a look into, and just to see the operational side as well.
Just touching back on the Leaders Award, do you think the competition kind of teaches the skills needed for places like network rail?
Yes, I'd say yes, because it gives people an idea of, I think, kind of how to build things and the ideas that that somebody needs to create, create something that works, and obviously to test kind of how something works. So that whole process from having an idea in your head to kind of designing it to ultimately building it and it staying there. So, I've been in a position where I have a model train on my desk at work, and all the way through now to every bridge that I have ever built, I've taken a marker pen and I've put my initials on a piece of that bridge. So every bridge that I have built for the last 8 years in the country has my initials on it, as previous engineers would do in the past, because it's something that I'm kind of really proud of, and something that I want to kind of, my bridges will have a design life of 120 years, so they will be there a lot longer than I will be, and I want to kind of show my children and grandchildren, I'm really proud of the stuff that I've built. So I think it's great for kind of the Leaders Award and the people doing it to see that there is, if you have an idea now and you have that enthusiasm, keep it, keep building it, keep being excited by things, keep being curious, keep wanting to learn, because the more you do, the more opportunities will open for you.
I think that's kind of some good advice there. I was going to kind of finish on this question here, Dominic, if that's okay. What advice would you give to the young engineers who are listening today?
I would, I think twofold. I would say, as I just said then, just keep being curious. And I know, I'm not going to say I've stolen that from Maddie Moat, but she's one of my kind of inspirations from this. In that you have to be excited. If you're excited by something, there is a reason you're excited by it, and you have to channel that energy into doing something really, really good. But then I also think that, as well as challenging things, there's been a lot of not having people say no a lot of the time, because people they'll say, oh, well, don't do this or don't do this. Carry on being excited and carry on designing and carry on building, but it's really important, as I do, to listen to engineers and people that have been alive for longer than you and that have done it before, and that have built things before, because a lot of people have a lot of experience that you can tap into and be even better at what you do, because you're learning from them as well. So even being in school, learning from people that have been there and done it is so much better than just kind of trying to make it up on your own.
I think that's some really good advice there, Dominic, to kind of end on there. I think that's brilliant for those young engineers who are listening to that today. I just want to say a big thank you to all those who have been watching and sending in their questions. I think Dominic will agree they've been amazing, those questions that have come in. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well there, Dominic, answering those questions there. I also want to say a big thank you to you for taking time out of your day to do this for us. And I hope, like I said there, I hope you really enjoyed doing that for us today.
It's been brilliant. So thank you to everyone for asking such brilliant questions. And yeah, thank you to everyone for having me. It's been, if you ever need me back, I will happily come back.
Fantastic. I hope, I'm sure everyone has been inspired there to take on the Leaders Award competition due to Dominic there and his advice, and start designing. Use our resources on our website, www.leadersaward.com, to help you. And please join us in that with our future interviews. We've got Mamta Singal coming up on Wednesday, who's part of a major soft drinks company as well. So she'll be discussing all about that as well. I just want to say as well, we've got our online survey. I put that in the chat section on Zoom and on Facebook. If you could complete that, then we can relay that, the feedback from that back to Dominic as well for them. Thank you for joining us, everyone, today. I think we'll end it there. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.